And can you see the presentation as well? Okay, good. Fine. So we were discussing regarding the monitor last time, right? And we have also seen the comparison between monitor and semaphores, right? So can we just refresh? What is the problem with semaphores in general? Can anyone write that in chat? What is the drawback of using semaphores? Yes, programming overhead. Very nice. Mutual exclusion has to be handled by programmer. That's correct. So mutual exclusion as well as synchronization, both are going to be handled by the programmer, right? And if programmer writes the program in a hurry, right, you might swap out two lines and that may lead to deadlock. Okay, we had seen that earlier. Okay, so which part of the burden is taken away in case of monitor? Mutual exclusion or synchronization? Yes, that's correct. Mutual exclusion is provided by default, right, by monitor construct. As if you remember the concept, we have a black box, right? Only one process can be executing inside that black box, right? If you consider monitor as a black box, only one process can be executing inside the monitor at a time. Okay. What if that process blocks? What happens then? If the currently executing process blocks, what will happen to that process? It will go into, or which function you will be calling for that purpose? Yes, it will go into condition queue. Very good. CWait, right? We call CWait function for that case, right? Okay. And we will dispatch the other process. And we will dispatch the other process, right? Now, when the other process is running, while the other process is running, if the condition for which the previous process was waiting has occurred, okay, so the currently running process will make which call in this situation? To wake up that or to unblock that process? C signal, yes, right? We call it C signal, okay? So by using CWait and C signal, we are maintaining synchronization, yes or no? Right? CWait and C signal are the purpose of synchronization, okay? Mutual exclusion we don't need to worry about because monitor ensures that only one process can run at a time inside the monitor, okay? So that is guaranteed, fine? So this is the pseudocode of general producer consumer, right? That was missing from last class, that was remaining. So let us cover that first. So as you can see, in this case, producer is generating the character, okay? Then we are again entering the standard while true loop, okay? Producing the item, fine, and then appending, right? So production of item is kept out of critical section. Is that fine? Yes or no? Production of item is kept out of critical section. It can be done independently, right? You can produce any number of items in advance. That is not a problem. But what is the problem? When you insert the item, right? When you add the item to the buffer, at that point, we are having issue. So that is why the append function, right, is getting called. But remember, this append function is written where? If you remember the last time's code, it is inside monitor. It is inside monitor. So that means only one process can use that append procedure at a time, right? Only one process can use that procedure at a time. So mutual exclusion is guaranteed, right? And signaling mechanism will be handled by CWait and C signal calls. Okay. So are you fine with this producer part, right? Similarly, if you look at the consumer, it is again very simple. We take and then we consume, right? So which is a critical function over here, take or consume? Where we need to take care? It is take, right? Consumption can be done at any point of time, right? Consumption is independent, right? But taking out from the buffer is a critical task, right? So that's why we focus more on take, and take is defined again inside your monitor, right? So it is going to guarantee that only one process is using that take procedure. Okay, so are you fine with this as well? Right? So Java, as I said, provides default monitor construct, right? So if you are interested further, you can just go through Java documents and you can find out how monitor can be implemented. We are not going to do that in the lab. We will solely focus on semaphores, right? Because semaphores are very popular constructs, right? And as well as we are supposed to write at least 2 to 3 problem solutions, right? And all of them will be writing using semaphores, right? So once you get used to semaphores, after you finish with this subject or study of this subject, during the vacation period, you can try the same with monitors, right? So that will add to your experience, right, ultimately. So this we are covering in theory, monitor. We won't be seeing the practical of this, right? Okay. So that is the second option for providing mutual exclusion. Now we are moving towards a different area. That is called message passing. Yes, with respect to current world, which one is more useful, semaphore or monitor? Yes, so it's good that you have raised this point. So based on that, there is a question. Is the problem still remaining, which was there with semaphores, in case of monitors also? Yes, mutual exclusion is taken away. But what about programmer's burden or programmer's care that you need to take? It is partially removed, right? We can say that. Fine. So it is not totally removed, right? That is the correct answer. So still, what is the major part or what is the care programmer has to take in this situation, even when you are programming monitors? The order of C wait, C signal, and the place where you write that, right? If you write C wait and C signal at improper position, right, that won't work, right? So as a programmer, you need to be very careful at placement of that call, right, where you should place C wait and C signal. So if I compare that aspect, monitor and semaphore are at same level, right? But yes, if you want to avoid mutual exclusion handling, you can opt for monitors, right? That is a general comparison we can make, right? Is that fine, Rishi? Okay. So it is a trade-off, right? We need to decide based on what we have, right? Okay. So message passing. Suppose you have two processes, right, which are not sharing anything, right? Which are not sharing anything. They are just communicating with messages. Do we still need synchronization in this situation? Obviously, yes, right? So that is the area which we are going to cover now. That is the part of the, you can say, chapter. Fine. So that is known as message passing. Message passing is one of the way of inter-process communication. We have seen one of the way in lab, that was pipe. Right? Pipe is one of the way of handling and communication between the processes. Another way of doing that is shared memory. Right? So in the your main memory, you create, or let us say in secondary memory, you create a dedicated area, right, where your process can write some information, and from that the other process can read it, right? So yes, it is message passing is also applicable to OOPS concept. That's correct, yes, right? So if I say in general, message passing is only applicable when you are not sharing anything. Right? It is just for communication purpose, right? But the question is, while we are communicating, do we require synchronization? The answer is yes, right? Because see, if a sender is sending a message, right? And at that point, can the receiver continue its task or should it be waiting? That is the question, right? While sender has sent the message, what should happen to the receiver ideally? Should it wait for the message, incoming message, or it can be doing some background task? What does your logic say? That may be independent also, right? So yes, there are two cases. First thing is, if you are depending on that message, you have to wait. Yes or no? Yes. So if the receiver cannot proceed without the sender's message, right? That means in that case, receiver has to be blocking, right? But if that message can be stored somewhere, let us say, right? Then can my receiver do its own job? And whenever required, it can fetch that message, yes or no? There are two possibilities, right? Either I can have a waiting scenario or I can have non-waiting scenario. That's correct. Depending upon the message of the sender as well as depending upon the type of logic you have on the receiver side. Fine. So that is why we are having different categories, right? That we are going to see today. Okay. So basically we require two things. We need to maintain synchronization plus we need to maintain proper communication, right? These two are the important requirements for message passing. Okay. So if I say in general, we require two functions. One is send, the other is receive. Okay. And when you are sending the message, what should be the parameters? See, these are not programming language constructs. These are just written in terms of pseudocode, right? Send and receive are generic operations. Programmers have to write their code, basically, right, as per their application. But these are just general terms that we are using. Okay. So while you send, destination can be passed and the message can be passed. Okay. If your destination is fixed, that is the situation, right? Destination is not fixed. In which scenario that is possible? Where destination is not fixed? Where you are broadcasting the message, right? See, you don't know what are the clients, but basically you are broadcasting the message, right? So whichever client which are interested in getting the message, they will read, right? So this send primitive can also be modified, isn't it? Yes or no? So it depends upon your application, right? That's why I'm saying this is general definition, right? It can be modified. Similarly, when you receive the message, right? Ideally, you will require source information, right? From where it is coming. Okay. So that either can be embedded in the message itself, right? When you are sending the message, you write that this is my identification, right? And when the message is received, receiver can fetch that ID and it can know that this is the sender. Okay. Or else you can pass it statically, right? That is, receiver knows in advance from where message is going to come, right? I know my server, right? As a client, if I know my server, then it is fixed. But if I don't know, I can do it dynamically. Yes or no? Are you getting this idea? Right? So this is the concept of message passing, right? And again, message is always there, right? When you are, you might have an empty message where your actual message will be stored, right? It is like that. Okay. So let us continue with this. Communication requires synchronization, right? True or false? Obviously, it is true, right? So sender must send the message before receiver can receive. That is an obvious requirement, right? Otherwise, what will happen to receiver? If it is blocked on sending the message, yes, it will starve out, right? And that is not acceptable in case of networks, right? So actually, this message passing concept is a topic of distributed computing, right? In case of distributed computing, you are having lots of communication between servers, between the clients and servers, right? There, this concept applies. So today we are just going to look into the basics, right? So that you can have some idea, right? Later on, if you carry out master's program, during that, you might study network communication or even advanced operating system subject, where you will see the details of this, right? Message passing. Distributed computing is generally a subject in the master's program where you will be studying all these details, right? Okay, fine. So what happens to a process, right? Understand this question. After it issues the send or receive primitive, right? So there are two cases. Either the sender or receiver will block, right? That means sender blocks after sending the message and waiting for the acknowledgement. Yes or no? You are sending the message and you are waiting for the acknowledgement. That is one situation. Another case is sender sends the message and then it continues its next job, right? So sender is not waiting. Fine. Both are possible. Yes or no? both have their own applications as well, right? Similarly, if you see the receiver side, ideally we want receiver to block, isn't it? Until your reply is received, until your message is received, you would like to block if there is a dependency, right? That message is compulsory and urgent for you, so you have to wait, right, for its arrival. That is one thing. Another thing is receiver does not block, right? So your message will be lying in some mailbox, let us say, like we have in Gmail, right? In Gmail, until you log in, you won't be able to see whether new messages are received or not, right? So your messages are lying where? In the box, in the mailbox. And when you log in, you are able to fetch them, isn't it? Right? So which kind of example is there? Receiver is blocked or not in that situation? You are the receiver, right? As a client, right? Our mobile application or our desktop Gmail application is the client. So what is that situation? Your client is blocking or not blocking? It is not blocking, right? Because see, it is a request-based mechanism, right? Whenever you are logging in, at that point, request will be made to your mailbox, right? And if there are new mails in the mailbox, it will be fetched. Following this, right? So that is the concept, right? So there are how many cases total? Sender and receiver, if you count, there are 4 cases. That's correct, right? Sender blocked, unblocked, receiver blocked, unblocked. Okay. Out of these 4 cases, we can form 4 scenarios. Yes or no? Total 4 combinations, right? And out of 4, 3 are useful, right? So let us see that, right? Let us see that order, right? So these are the 3 useful options. The 4th one is not useful. Can you find that? Which one is missing? Blocking send, non-blocking receive. That is missing from this list. That means sender will block after sending the message, but receiver is not blocked, right? So if receiver is not blocked, should the sender block? Is there a practical solution? Think about that scenario. No, right? Obviously not, right? So that is why that scenario is valid, but it is not practical, right? So we summarize that we have 3 options, right? We go with either blocking send, blocking receive, right? The second is non-blocking send, blocking receive. That means sender, after sending the first message, can send the second also, right? But receiver cannot continue until the message is received. Okay, that is the second situation. Third, both of them are free. Non-blocking send, non-blocking receive, right? Where the reliability is not the issue, right? Which is the solution you will go with? 1, 2, 3. Message reliability is not the issue. Yes, that's correct. Third, where you require tight bound, which option you will go with? That's correct. 1, right? And which one will give you more concurrent behavior? 1, 2, and 3. That is 2. That's correct, right? So these are the applications. Understood? Right? So there are 3 possible scenarios. Based on that, we can go ahead. Okay. Let us start with the first one. It is called rendezvous, right? It is a French word. You can see this word over here, right? Rendezvous is the pronunciation for this word, right? It is tight synchronization between processes, right? Neither of the party can proceed. Okay. So after the message is sent, sender will be blocked for acknowledgement. Okay. And receiver would be blocked for the message receipt. Fine. What are the problems that you might have in this situation? Imagine messages getting lost in the network, right? So in that case, receiver will be blocked indefinitely for the message, right? And sender will not get the acknowledgement, right? So it is deadlock situation, right? But ideally, the channel that you create is a private channel. So the channel will take care of reliability, right? So this is tight synchronization of two processes. When you have one-to-one communication, this is applicable. Clear with this? Right? Rendezvous, it is the pronunciation of this word, right? Okay. If you go with non-blocking send, there are two possibilities, right? We can go with non-blocking send and blocking receive, okay? In the first case, after sending the first message, sender can continue, okay? But receiver would be blocked until the message arrives. Can we say this is the application of client server, where server can send multiple messages, right? But client cannot proceed without the receipt of the message. Yes, client server can have many scenarios, but I'm giving you, you can say, a clear scenario. Not exactly Gmail, yes, because in that case, we are not having sender and receiver directly connected, right? You have a mailbox in between, right? So that's why that is a different case, right? Yes, you can say search engine, right? That is one of the example that you can say. So starvation for client may occur. That's correct, right? SMS is again one-to-one, right? So again, for that you have a intermediary service involved over that. So, but still, I would say it will be tight communication, right? But yes, when you are broadcasting the SMS, then it is a different scenario, right? Yes, so in networks, you can find so many applications for this, right? So that's why I said this is a distributed computing concept. It is not actually a pure OS concept, right? Message passing. Okay. The third scenario, non-blocking send, non-blocking receive, right? So neither party waits. This gives you efficiency in terms of time execution time, right? That is, you are not supposed to wait, okay? But reliability might be hampered, right? So you need to handle, or you need to be able to ready to handle the loss of message, right? So actually the message should not be critical. Suppose you are sending transaction details, right? Then can you opt for this mechanism? Non-blocking send, non-blocking receive. If you are handling banking applications, in that case, this is not applicable, right? Because reliability is not there, fine? So in that case, you have to go with either non-blocking send, blocking receive, or one-to-one. That is blocking send, blocking receive. Depending upon the situation, you can opt for any one of them, right? So these are the three possible scenarios of message passing. Clear with this? Right. Okay. So let us continue. Fine. Now we'll focus on addressing. So when we are sending messages, right, there are two ways of writing the addresses, right? Either we use direct addressing, that is, we write the sender's detail in the header itself where I'm sending the message. Second is indirect. That means I'm going through some intermediary service, like a mailbox, right? You put your message in the mailbox and the other party will take that message from the mailbox, right? That is called indirect addressing. Okay, so we'll see the examples. Let us continue. So direct addressing. In case of direct addressing, how we can design the send operation and receive operation. Let us look at that. When we are sending the message, we can write a specific identifier that will identify the destination. That is called direct, right? So in this case, your destination is fixed, right? Because it is direct addressing. Destination is always fixed. Fine. Now, what about the receive operation? It can be designed in two ways. Either the receiver should know in advance that who is the sender, right? So suppose it is like a subscriber model, right? You have subscribed for some post, right? And when you know which topics you have subscribed for or to which service you have subscribed for, right? So you know that the message is going to come from this domain only, right? That is one scenario, fine? Or the second case is you can use the source parameter, or you can use the source parameter from the message itself, and based on that source parameter, you detect who is the sender. So which is the dynamic approach, first or second? Second is dynamic approach, right? First case is a static approach where we know in advance who is going to send me the messages, right? That is again used in tight communication. But if you want to have free communication, you can go with the second. Okay. So this is how the send and receive operations can be designed. Clear with this for direct addressing, right? Indirect addressing. Let us look at this. Messages are sent to a shared data structure, right? Now again, we have the shared data structure, but this is a data structure which is handled or stored separately on some server, right? So it is called a mailbox, like we have in Gmail application, right? And that mailbox has number of queues, right? So if one queue is getting full, your message will be appended to the next queue and so on, right? So that's how your messages are getting stored, okay? So let us understand the second part. One process sends the message to the mailbox, right? And the other process will pick up the message from the mailbox, right? So it is just like you are decoupling the sender and receiver, yes or no? So what is the benefit of this mechanism? What about waiting? Do we have to wait? No, right? We don't have to wait, right? We can continue. What we can do is whenever we want the message, what we can do? We can go to mailbox and see, right? Is there any message, right? If there is any message, then I will fetch it, okay? Otherwise, I can do my job, okay? So actually your sender and receiver gets decoupled if you are going with indirect addressing, right? What is the overhead in this case? Again, it's very obvious. What is the problem with this? You have to invest on a mailbox handling mechanism, right? A server has to be dedicated, which will handle your incoming mails, outgoing mails, right? And you need to maintain their, you can say, time also. That means once that mail is deleted, you need to make sure that it is completely deleted, right? So storage, retrieval, all those things will have to be managed, right? But although this is an efficient system, right? If you go with indirect addressing, okay? So we can have 4 types, right? In case of even indirect addressing or as well as indirect addressing. In general, these are the 4 types. Either we can go with one-to-one, okay? So that is a private communication. One-to-many, that is a broadcast mechanism. Servers send the messages to multiple clients, right? That is a broadcast. So broadcast and multicast, can anyone tell me the difference between broadcast and multicast? If you have gone through that concept anytime. There are 2 terms, right? One server in broadcast, okay, one sender. Yes. In case of broadcast, ideally, your clients are fixed. That is, you know your clients, right? While in case of multicast, we simply send the message. Whoever is interested will fetch it, right? So that is again an interesting term. You will study about all these things in service-oriented computing subject in your next semester, right? Where you will study a complete chapter on this communication mechanisms, right? So many-to-one is the next example. Client server again, right? Because there are many clients on the other side and one client, right, on the other side. Many-to-many, it is a combination. Multiple clients, multiple servers, right? So in each case, let us see how we manage, right? If it is one-to-one, you can have a private mailbox, right? You can have a private mailbox. So sender will send the message to that private mailbox and receiver will read from that mailbox only, right? So you can say that it is like a pipe, right? We have seen that. But this time, actually this mailbox is not directly connected. As you know, pipe is what? Pipe will remain connected to that process forever, right? Until your process is there, right? While over here, you will have a private mailbox available, right? Second is many-to-one, right? So you can see many on one side and one on the other side. So it is a client-server application again, right? So in case of many-to-one, the mailbox is named as port, Why so? Because every server, right, or every client will have their own dedicated port, right? So that's why the central box is named as a port. Ultimately, it is a mailbox only, right? Third is opposite, right? You have one sender, multiple receivers, right? So it is again client server in reverse, right? And if you have multiple servers sending to multiple clients, that is the fourth scenario, right? So that is many to many situation, right? Let us see what we can have as a message format, right? So whenever you are sending the message, what you should contain, okay? By default, message type is required because see, different communication protocols support different message types, right? If you are sending an HTML message, right, or if you are sending message in XML format, right? So what are the different categories? Even in the programming language, there are different types, right? So that is the message type you need to write. Source and destination by default will be there. If it is supposed to go to multiple destinations, then also IDs will be stored, right? So your header size will increase, isn't it? If you are broadcasting the message, size of your header will be large, right? Message length. Now, this is required for which purpose? Can you tell me? Why should we store the message length? In case of, yes, exactly, verification on the receiver side, right? As well as to store in the mailbox, to check for the capacity. Very good, right? But the major role is the receiver would like to see that I have received the complete message or not, right? It is possible that some, yes, exactly, some contents might have lost, right? So that is one option. That is why we store the message length. Control information. Control information is regarding how to decode that message, right? What are the encoding, decoding message, techniques used, right? So all the extra information, right, that we store as control information. How to read that message. If you are supposed to use some specific parser, some specific language to decode that, right? So all those details can be written over here, fine. And then actually comes the body part, right? So your message is actually heavy in terms of the header. Yes or no? Your message is heavy in terms of the header, fine. If it is one-to-one communication, then the size of the header will be less ideally, right? Because you don't need to store too many details. Because sender knows who is the receiver knows who is the sender, right? So the amount of information can be reduced. But if you are having a dynamic communication, right? If you are having intermediaries, right, who are handling this message, in that case, the size of header is very high. Fine. So we don't, we need to take care of not only message body, but we should also worry about the size of the header, right? Because as heavy the message is, that much time it will take to travel, right? So that is what we need to address. Okay. Now let us come back to OS, right? Mutual exclusion using messages. How we can use this technique for mutual exclusion, right? So you are given a simple algorithm, right? Let us observe that. First thing is we are assuming non-blocking send, blocking receive mechanism, right? So when it is non-blocking send, we are not supposed to take care in the sending part, yes or no? Because you are free, right? You can send n number of messages whenever you want, right? Sender is not blocked. So where we should take care? In case of receive part, right? So a simple solution that we can write is try to receive the message. That is called the receive operation, which programmer has written, right? Now what that receive operation will do internally, it will check the mailbox, right? If mailbox is empty, right, and if you are dependent on that message, what you should do? Block the process, right? Ideally, if we have a producer consumer kind of scenario, we have to block, right? Because there is nothing in the box, so I cannot proceed, fine. So you block, okay. Otherwise, what is the otherwise part? Mailbox is containing something, right? If it is containing, we enter critical section, right? Fetch the item, as well as we need to make sure that when we are fetching the item, when we are processing the message, the others should not interfere, isn't it? Because it is possible that you might also be modifying the message after reading it, right? So all other processes which are requesting the access to mailbox will be blocked, right? So are you getting some similar idea like we have seen in producer consumer? Right? It is almost similar case, right? So extract the message. Yes, at this point sender is blocked. Sender is not blocked, Urjit, because sender is free, right? You can append your messages into mailbox at any point, right? Because we are not having any data item shared, right? It is just the mailbox which is shared, right? Okay. So once you have processed the message, once you have done whatever you are supposed to do, then you will put the message again in the box. Why? Because the other processes might be blocked, right? And waiting for that message. Okay. So this is where we are ensuring mutual exclusion. Are you following this else part? Right? This is the essence where you are following mutual exclusion. If you want to see the pseudocode, it looks like this, right? I have given you the basic meaning. Now let us see the pseudocode. Okay, I'm just zooming it. So again, we are naming n as number of processes, right? While true, we will block on receive, right? That is the mechanism we have. So receive, box, and message, right? This is the important part. And why we are having a message parameter? Because it is a dummy message which we are declaring initially. And once you get the message, right, it will contain the actual message. Message is just a container, empty container initially, right? When the message is available, it will contain the actual message, right? So that is why it is declared like this: box, comma, message. Okay. If receive can go through, what is that situation? If receive succeeds, what does that mean? There is a message. Yes or no? Receive can only succeed if there is a message available, right? So if message is available, then your critical section starts. That means any other process cannot access that same message at the same time. Okay. Once you are done with that, see what we are doing. Sending the message to the box again, right? So that other processes can utilize. Clear with this solution, right? So this is one possible solution of mutual exclusion using message passing. Okay. Fine. Now let us see the main as well. First, we are creating the mailbox, right? This is just a pseudocode, right? Programmers have to write the methods, right? That is not covered over here because, as I said, this is a distributed computing concept. So even in OS, we are not going in detail, right? Okay. Send box with null. So what is this? Can anyone tell me? This is nothing but initialization, right? We are initializing the box with null so that it does not contain garbage, right? We can make sure that it is garbage free, right? And the sender code is not written. Why? Because sender does not require any code, right? Sender can simply send the message to the mailbox, right? So that's why that code is not shown over here. This is just ensuring that the receiver works properly. Clear with this, right? So can we design a solution of producer-consumer problem using message passing? Yes or no? Can you think of a solution where we can have message passing for producer-consumer? Because over here, what we have proved, message passing can be used for which purpose? Mutual exclusion. And what producer-consumer requires? Mutual exclusion and synchronization both. Synchronization will be provided by message passing. Yes or no? If you write that receive and send messages properly, synchronization is going to be provided, right? And if I apply this kind of logic for producer consumer, right, then it can actually solve both the things, right? So we want to utilize the power of message passing for this producer consumer problem, right? So let us go through the mutual exclusion solution first, and then I'll show you that solution, right? But now I'll give you the task to understand that producer consumer solution. We have discussed two ways, semaphores and monitors, right? This time I'm going to give you that solution. You try to understand. Okay, but before that, let us understand this part. Okay. So what did we assume? Blocking receive and non-blocking send, right? That's what we assume. Blocking receive, non-blocking send, right? If there is a message, right, it is delivered to only one process, right, and the others are blocked. True or false? In the solution we saw in the previous slide, this is the description of that, right? If there is a message, it will be handled by only one process at a time, others will be blocked, right? Understand the second situation. What if you want to take the message, right, while queue is empty? What will happen in that situation? While mailbox is empty, then everyone will block, right? So that is the second situation. All the processes are blocked, right, if message queue is empty. When a message is available, only one block process will be activated and given the message, right? So it is going to make sure that it is satisfying mutual exclusion. Yes, that's correct, right? Okay. Now, still we have 10 minutes, right? I'm giving you some time. Observe this code, right? First, focus on producer, right? I'm giving you the brief, right? We are creating two mailboxes, right? Just listen to what I'm saying. We are creating two mailboxes. One is to be used by producer. The other is to be used by consumer, right? And the consumer mailbox is actually shared. Consumer mailbox is actually shared, right? So after the item is produced, it is supposed to be placed into consumer mailbox or may consume mailbox. You can see this name over here, right? And consumer will also use that mailbox for fetching the items. Okay. Then what is the purpose of may produce mailbox? It is used to keep count of messages. How many messages producer has added, right? So that producer can know that where I should block, right? So actually this solution is provided using two mailboxes, right? Initially, the mailbox is filled with null. Initially, the mailbox is filled with null. You can see this line, right? That means mailbox is empty. Yes or no? Right? Initially, mailbox is empty. Okay. With that assumption, go through this producer part, right? I'm giving you some time. Try and understand this yourself, right? This part. We should block on what? We should block on receive, right? If may produce mailbox, right, is having 5 null elements, what does that mean? If may produce mailbox is having 5 null elements, that means my buffer capacity is 5. Okay. So what does that interpret as? 5 null elements. That means it is empty. That means there are 5 slots which can be filled. There are 5 slots that can be filled. Okay, good. So if producer finds at least one null, it won't block. Agreed? That is the job of this receive function, right? First call, receive, may produce, p message. P message is what? It is just a dummy message, right? Where the actual message will be stored. As I said, it is a container where your message will be stored, right? Okay, good. Now, if you are not blocking, what you can do then? What is your job as a producer? Produce the item, right? So that's what we are doing in the second line, right? So P message produce. Now comes the important part, right? You have produced, right? But for which purpose you are producing the messages? So that consumer can consume, right? So that is why you have to put that message in the consumer, or you can say shared mailbox. May consume is going to be a shared mailbox between producer and consumer, like you had that shared buffer. Can you relate with that? Right? You had shared buffer over there, or over here we are having this shared mailbox. Okay, good. So after you send the message, let us say you have added the first message, right? Then if we go with this consumer part, let us focus over here, right? See what consumer is blocking upon. Receive, may consume, and see message. Can you interpret this line? What is being done over here? Yes? If may consume is not containing anything, what will happen? It will block, definitely, right? If may consume is containing a message, then this call will be successful. Can you map this concept to the consumer we have seen earlier, standard consumer, right? It is almost related, right? Just the syntax changes, okay? In every method, the syntax changes, okay? Good. Now, if you can enter the may consume mailbox, right? Then you will consume the item, okay? And then see what we are doing again. Do you understand this line? Send may produce null. What we have done after consuming one item, we have created one empty slot, right? So that if producer was blocked on full buffer condition, then it can continue. Yes or no? Right? You just have to understand producer consumer problem, right? Then there are number of possible scenarios. After producing, you need to add message into may produce. No, Priyank, you are supposed to add that to only may consume. May produce is just maintaining counter. Are you getting the need of may produce over here? It is just for maintaining how many messages are there, right? Where the actual messages are stored? In the may consume mailbox, right? Yes, you don't increment, right? See, you don't increment. It is not mentioned over there. But basically, see over here, what we are doing, we are filling may produce with null, right? We are filling may produce with null. So no, never overflow will occur. In this case, overflow will occur. Why not? See, if all the messages are filled, right, then your process has to block, right? Now that you have to write in the receive function, that code. I got your question, right? So as a programmer, you have to write that code in the receive. You need to check, is may produce full, then block. Are you following this? Right? So it is the programmer's responsibility again to write this receive and send primitives, right, as per their logic, right? So even this code can be written in Java or any other programming language, right? But the body of the send and receive has to be written properly. So again, if programmer does not take care, can the same problem arise? If the logic is not proper, right? Same problems can arise, right? Yes, after one producer message, it will jump to consumer part, or it will produce till full capacity. Yes, in this case, again, if we assume that there is a pool of processes available, right? Number of producers, number of consumers available. So it depends upon dispatcher. Yes, are you fine with that? Yes. So it depends upon dispatcher. So in the remaining 5 minutes, let us go through the description. Now I think you will understand it clearly, right? So we are using two mailboxes, right? As the producer generates the data, that data is sent as a message to may consume. Clear with the first line, right? Now the conditions. As long as there is at least one message in the mailbox, right, That means there is at least one message available. Consumer can consume that. Okay, that's what we have seen. Fine up to this. Okay, so as I said, may consume serves as a buffer, right, where you are storing queue of messages basically, right? So may consume is acting as your shared buffer of your producer consumer, right? And may produce is just acting as a counter, right? If you remember, we were using that semaphore n as a counter, yes or no, in the earlier solution of semaphores, right? So you can compare that n, semaphore n, with what? It is may produce, isn't it? Is that fine? Right? Just try to compare, right? Then the concept will get clear. Okay, good. Size. Now the size variable is determined by the global variable capacity. That means how many messages you can contain. That should be known in advance, right? Because that depends upon what? Your memory capacity, right? You cannot contain more than the memory available, right? So size is always fixed. Fine. Okay. Initially, the mailbox may produce is filled with a number of null messages. These two lines are important. Please understand. Mailbox is filled with number of null messages, right? And that is equal to capacity of the buffer. Clear with this line? Line number 2, right? Now, this is the tricky part. Let us understand. Number of messages in may produce shrinks with each production, right? That means as soon as you add one item, that means one null will be replaced, right? One null will be replaced with actual item, right? Let us say a count, okay? And it grows with each consumption. So as soon as you consume, consumer does what? It writes null over there. Understood this? Yes, it is null plus plus. Exactly, right? So that is how we are able to achieve what? Synchronization. This is where synchronization takes place, right? Mutual exclusion is already there, right? But this is where we are achieving synchronization. Fine. So as far as mutual exclusion is concerned, which is the critical mailbox? May consume, right? That is for the mutual exclusion purpose. For synchronization, we are utilizing this may produce. Okay, and that is why we require this second buffer. Okay, so is this fine to all? Right? Next problem is readers writers problem, but that I'm postponing for the lab session, right? Because still we have to write the producer consumer solution in the lab. We need to study semaphore syntax as well, right? So producer consumer is a simpler problem rather than the reader writer. So first we will write that solution, and the lab after that, I will describe you the complete solution of readers writers, right? Because it is on the same lines, so I'm reserving that for the lab session. Fine. So right now, we declare this chapter as finished up to 99%. One topic left, that is readers writers, that we will take up in the lab session. Okay. Till that, you go through all the concepts, right? Tomorrow we'll be starting with deadlock, right? So the next lectures will be focusing on deadlock, because now I'm going in a sequence. We have seen process state transition diagrams. We have seen process interaction, right? Synchronization, right? Now we can understand how deadlocks are handled, right, by the operating system, right? So we will see number of techniques: deadlock detection, deadlock prevention, as well as deadlock avoidance, right? These three are different techniques. That's what we are going to start from tomorrow onward. Okay. And if we finish with deadlock, after that we'll focus on the memory management part. That is still remain, right? Okay, so let us end this session. Have a good day ahead. Bye.